When you look at the data from Robert G. Cooper's research, there is this one statistic that just fundamentally shifts how you view corporate stability.
Oh, absolutely. It changes your whole perspective.
Right. Because, like, you walk into a major company and you see the massive headquarters, the established product lines, those quarterly profit reports. It feels permanent.
Hmm.
But the data shows that over a quarter of corporate revenues, 27.3% to be exact, come from products that didn't even exist 3 years ago.
Which means the ground is just constantly shifting. I mean, more
Yeah.
than $1 in $4 a company makes is from something they weren't even selling just 36 months prior.
That is just wild. Welcome to the deep dive, everyone. Today, we are taking a stack of notes drawn from the fifth edition of Cooper's seminal book.
Yeah, winning at new products, creating value through innovation.
Exactly. And we're exploring how companies can achieve bold, game-changing innovation in record time. Because whether you're listening to this as someone leading a massive division or, just trying to pitch a new concept at your next team meeting, innovation is literal survival.
It really is. You basically have to replace a quarter of your revenue foundation every 3 years just to stay relevant.
So our mission today is to decode the secrets of the top performing innovators and give you a shortcut to applying these principles to your own projects. Okay, let's unpack this. If continuous innovation is the only way to survive, why are so many companies getting it completely wrong?
Well, we are actually sitting in the middle of a massive innovation slump right now.
Really? A slump?
Yeah, the source material highlights this really biting observation from the venture capitalist Peter Thiel. He said of this generation's inventors, we wanted flying cars. Instead, we got 140 characters.
Which sounds kind of counterintuitive, right? I mean, we're surrounded by smartphones and artificial intelligence and all this tech.
True, but if you look outside of a few hyper-specific tech sectors, the broader corporate landscape is totally stagnated. What's fascinating here is that the data shows U.S. research and development spending by companies grew steadily from 1950 to 1980.
Okay.
But after 1980, it essentially flatlined as a percentage of overall corporate spending.
Wait, 1980, that perfectly coincides with the explosion of Wall Street deregulation and, that deep obsession with quarterly shareholder value. Did the financial markets basically kill the corporate R&D lab?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Executives became increasingly pressured by the financial community for short-term, predictable profits.
Right, because of high-frequency trading and those brutal quarterly earnings reports, they demand immediate
Yeah,
returns.
exactly. So bold, multi-year projects suddenly looked way too risky to a CEO who honestly might get ousted if the next quarter looks weak.
So the incentives completely shifted away from invention and toward, like, self-preservation.
Yeah, and the pipeline data Cooper provides illustrates this perfectly. If you compare the 1990s to the 2000s, the number of new-to-the-world products,
You mean those true game-changing innovations that create entire new markets?
right, those dropped by 43%. Today, they make up barely 11% of development portfolios.
Wow. So if companies aren't funding new-to-the-world ideas, what on earth is eating up all the R&D budget?
Minor improvements to existing products.
Yeah.
Tweaks,
It's
basically.
just tweaks.
Yeah, those have surged by 80% and now make up nearly 40% of all projects.
Oh, this is the kitchen appliance phenomenon. The book talks about this.
Yes, such a great example.
Right, because between 1900 and 1970, the kitchen was radically transformed. We went from blocks of ice delivered on a horse to, electric refrigerators.
Mhm.
We saw the invention of gas stoves, dishwashers, microwaves. The core mechanics of how we prepared food changed
It
entirely.
was a total revolution.
But in the last 50 years, we've basically just added digital displays and Wi-Fi to those exact same machines. I mean, the core technology of a refrigerator is the same as it was in the 1970s. We're just slapping touchscreens on old ideas.
Exactly.
Mm.
And companies prioritize tweaking that digital interface because it offers a fast, highly predictable return on investment.
It's safe.
Right. Inventing a completely new method of food preservation might take a decade and hundreds of millions of dollars with absolutely no guarantee of success.
It reminds me so much of the movie industry. Studios are terrified of short-term losses at the box office.
Yeah.
So instead of investing in original, untested concepts, the next unexpected blockbuster, they just churn out safe, predictable sequels. We get the 15th superhero reboot because it comes with a built-in audience and a predictable financial floor.
They're terrified of bombing.
Exactly. But eventually the audience gets bored and the entire industry suffers a slump.
Right. The companies are protecting their immediate bottom line, but they're starving their future growth engines. And this reliance on tweaking existing products, it stems from a fundamental misconception in business,
Which
the mad scientist in a lab myth. We're conditioned to think that to innovate, a company must create entirely new science, or, like, a disruptive technology from scratch.
the idea that innovation requires inventing something no one has ever seen before.
Yes, exactly.
To challenge that, I think we should look at the most successful new product in consumer electronics history, the Apple iPod.
Oh, absolutely. So, launched in 2001, the iPod reached 50 million units sold in just 4.5 years.
That's insane.
Right. At its peak, it sold over 54 million units annually. It completely transformed Apple from a struggling niche computer company into a global powerhouse.
But the kicker for anyone assuming innovation means pure invention is this: Apple did not invent the MP3 player.
Not even close. When Steve Jobs announced the iPod, there were almost 50 competitors already selling portable MP3 players in the U.S. market alone.
50.
Yeah, the underlying technology was already commoditized.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Not only did they not invent the MP3 player, they didn't even build the iPod's hardware from scratch. John Rubinstein, who was Apple's hardware lead at the time, essentially went shopping. He found a brand new 1.8-inch hard drive that Toshiba had prototyped but didn't really know what to do with.
Right.
He sourced a battery from Sony. He bought microchips from Texas Instruments.
He assembled a revolutionary product largely from off-the-shelf existing components.
Exactly. The most successful product ever wasn't some mad scientist invention. It was a brilliantly executed remix of existing parts.
Because Apple's breakthrough was strategic, not scientific. They looked at the existing landscape of MP3 players and identified massive, glaring user problems.
Like what?
Well, the existing players had really cumbersome interfaces, they held very few songs, and the process of actually getting music onto them legally was an absolute nightmare.
I remember that. It was awful.
Right. So Apple didn't invent digital music. They invented a seamless ecosystem to solve those specific pain points. And because they were integrating existing technology rather than inventing new science, they went from concept to a ready-to-ship product in less than 9 months.
9 months. I mean, there are corporate committees that take 9 months just to approve the naming conventions for a new product.
Exactly.
And the contrast with Sony here is vital. Sony owned the portable music market. They introduced the Walkman in 1979. They had the brand loyalty, the global distribution, the manufacturing infrastructure. They should have dominated digital music.
They absolutely should have. But Sony failed because their organizational structure and strategic focus were purely defensive.
Defensive how?
Well, they had a massively profitable music division, a record label that was terrified of digital piracy.
Oh, right.
So instead of attacking the new MP3 arena, Sony tried to force consumers into using their proprietary, highly restricted digital mini-disc format. They prioritized protecting their legacy revenue over solving the consumer's desire for frictionless digital music.
So it was a failure of strategy and internal alignment, not a lack of technical capability.
Spot on.
So, if the iPod was just a fast integration of existing parts to solve a user problem, it begs a fairly obvious question. Why doesn't everyone do this? I mean, relying on a hardware executive to just happen upon a Toshiba hard drive isn't exactly a repeatable corporate strategy.
No, definitely not. But Apple had a highly disciplined system in place that allowed that integration to happen. Cooper outlines this system in the source material as the innovation diamond.
The innovation diamond. Okay.
Yeah, it's a holistic 4-vector playbook. You can't just implement one piece. The mechanism requires all 4 working together.
Okay, let's break down the mechanics of the diamond, starting with vector 1, strategy.
Right, so strategy in this context means defining your strategic arenas or hunting grounds. A company cannot simply mandate, we need new ideas and expect teams to innovate.
That never works.
Never. You have to focus research and development on specific fertile areas where your company has a mechanical advantage. The source material uses Corning as a prime example here.
Corning, right. They are traditionally a glass manufacturer.
Exactly. They evaluated their core technical competency manufacturing specialized glass and mapped it against emerging macro trends. They recognized the embryonic flat panel screen market was going to explode.
Smart.
Gary. By explicitly declaring flat panel displays as their strategic hunting ground, they focus their engineers. It prevents teams from wandering aimlessly and ensures that when they do find an innovative solution, it aligns with a massive growth opportunity.
Okay, so Corning maps out a brilliant hunting ground. But targeting a big, bold, embryonic market usually means asking the executive board for a significant amount of capital. How do these innovators actually get funding approved when the ideas are so untested?
Well, that naturally leads us to Vector 2, portfolio management.
Yeah, okay.
This is exactly where most companies inadvertently kill their best ideas. The mechanism of failure here is the reliance on traditional financial evaluation tools, specifically net present value, or NPV.
I've heard of that. Explain how the math of NPV actually works against innovation.
Sure. So NPV calculates the present value of future cash flows, discounted by risk, and the time it takes to realize those returns.
Right.
If a product manager pitches a safe, minor tweak, say a cherry-flavored version of an existing cola, they can accurately predict the manufacturing costs, the distribution channels, and the expected sales. The risk is low, the timeline is short, so the NPV math looks fantastic.
But if they pitch a completely new beverage category that requires new manufacturing lines and educating the consumer,
Then the time horizon is much longer, and the uncertainty is incredibly high. The NPV formula mathematically punishes that uncertainty, driving the projected value down to zero or even negative.
wow.
Yeah. If we connect this to the bigger picture, using traditional NPV for radical innovation is like asking a startup founder for a 10-year bus schedule for a city that hasn't been built yet. You're demanding absolute financial certainty in a realm where only exploration and iteration are possible.
That is a great way to put it. Because the spreadsheet demands certainty, the executives kill the bold idea and fund the cherry cola. So what is the mechanical fix for this?
Top innovators use what are called strategic buckets. They deliberately wall off a specific percentage of their R&D budget, a bucket of capital exclusively for venturesome, high-risk projects.
I see.
The bold ideas are only evaluated against other bold ideas within that bucket. They never have to compete against the safe, highly predictable tweaks on a traditional financial spreadsheet.
Okay, getting the capital is one hurdle. Surviving the development process is another. Vector 3 is the idea to launch engine. This addresses the valley of death.
Yes, that brutal middle phase where great concepts just wither and die before they ever see the market.
Right. So how does the traditional model handle this?
Poorly. The traditional development model is linear. It's often called the stage gate process. You lock in the product requirements, you spend a year and 100% of the budget building it in secret, and then you unveil it.
And the flaw there is pretty obvious, right?
Extremely. The fatal flaw in that mechanism is that if the market shifted during that year, or if your initial assumptions were wrong, you've wasted everything. You find out you built the wrong product only after you've spent all the money.
So how did the top 20% navigate the valley of death differently?
They've transitioned to agile, adaptive processes, borrowing heavily from the software industry. Instead of spending 100% of the budget to build a finished product, they spend 5% to build a rapid prototype.
Okay.
Then they immediately put that prototype in front of a customer to test their underlying hypothesis. The customer feedback dictates the next iteration.
So it's an iterative loop rather than a straight line?
Precisely. If the idea is flawed, they find out early and pivot before they burn through the capital. This agile methodology is mechanically what allowed Apple to integrate those components and launch the iPod in just 9 months.
Right. They didn't spend 2 years theorizing about what consumers wanted.
No, they built, tested, and iterated continuously.
Which brings us to the final component, Vector 4, climate and culture. And this isn't just about like having ping pong tables in the break room, right? It's about how leadership behaves when one of those rapid prototypes inevitably fails.
Exactly. It is the environment in which the other three vectors operate. If a company implements strategic buckets and agile processes, but leadership publicly punishes a team when a bold prototype fails.
The culture instantly reverts to safety.
Right. Engineers will never take another risk. The executive team has to actively reward the behavior of taking big swings and learning from failures rather than just rewarding safe, guaranteed outcomes.
Okay, so we've laid out the mechanics. You define the hunting ground, protect the risk capital in strategic buckets, use agile prototyping to survive the valley of death, and foster a leadership culture that tolerates iteration.
Yes.
But let's look at the actual outcomes. Does putting this entire diamond system in place generate a measurable advantage?
It absolutely does. The research analyzed thousands of project studies, isolating the top 20% of innovators against the bottom 20%. The divergence in outcomes is massive.
Let's hear the numbers.
For the best performers, 36.3% of their total revenue comes from new products. For the worst performers, it's only 10%.
Wow. They are generating nearly 4 times the revenue growth from new ideas.
Yeah. And on top of that, when the best innovators finally launch a product, it succeeds in the market 79.5% of the time. The worst performers see success only 37.6% of the time.
So the top companies aren't just taking wild gambles. Their agile processes ensure that by the time they launch, they've already validated the market need.
Exactly. The metric that stands out the most, though, is the slip rate.
Oh, slip rate. Explain what that is.
Slip rate measures how late a project is compared to its original planned timeline. Like if a company approves a 12-month development cycle, how long does the project actually take to reach the market? For the top 20% of innovators, the slip rate is 17.2%.
Yeah.
So a 12-month project takes roughly 14 months.
Which is totally fine. A 2-month delay is manageable.
But for the bottom tier, the slip rate is 44.3%. That same 12-month project drags on for over 17 months.
So what does this all mean? I mean, if you're listening to this and you've ever been trapped in a project that was supposed to launch by Thanksgiving, but is still dragging on in endless status meetings in May,
Oh, we've all been there.
right, you are experiencing that 44% slip rate firsthand. It drains team morale, it blows through the budget, and worst of all, while you are stuck in internal review cycles, your competitor just shipped their product.
And this raises a really important question. Why is that slip rate so much more lethal today than it was in the past?
Why is it?
We have to look at the macro context of information velocity. Historically, the sum total of human knowledge used to double every century. Today, human knowledge doubles every 13 months.
Every 13 months, the collective technological capability of the world is doubling. That is staggering.
It is. That means any proprietary advantage you think you have is degrading almost instantly.
Because knowledge is expanding that rapidly.
Right. And because of that, product life cycles have shrunk by a factor of 4 over the last 50 years. A consumer appliance that used to sit on a shelf unchanged for 12 years now becomes obsolete and requires a replacement model every 3 or 4 years.
So if your organizational slip rate is 44%, your product is technologically outdated before the factory even begins production.
Exactly. Being average in product development today is mathematically unsustainable.
If you are moving at an average speed, you're actively falling behind the market.
Yep. The pace of external change has fundamentally outstripped the internal pace of traditional corporate development.
Man, bringing this all together, the core lesson from Cooper's research is incredibly empowering, especially if you are tasked with driving growth. Because bold innovation is not about being a solitary genius. You don't need to lock yourself in a laboratory and invent disruptive new science from scratch. It is about identifying big, painful problems that consumers are actively experiencing. It's about integrating existing technologies to solve those problems seamlessly. It requires using agile, iterative systems so you can validate your ideas quickly. And it demands a leadership culture that relies on strategic buckets rather than traditional spreadsheets to fund the future.
Perfectly said. The most successful companies have made a deliberate shift in mindset from pure invention to rapid integration. And, there's a final really provocative thought from the source material regarding that velocity we talked about.
Oh, let's hear it.
We noted that knowledge currently doubles every 13 months. But the source cites an IBM estimate regarding the proliferation of the Internet of Things.
Okay.
As billions of devices connect and share continuous data, human knowledge will soon double every 12 hours.
Every 12 hours. That completely breaks our traditional understanding of long-term planning. I can't even wrap my head around that.
Right. If human knowledge is doubling twice a day, and product life cycles are shrinking to near zero, does the future of business belong entirely to the fastest integrators?
Wow.
Think about it. If an academic or a competitor invents the raw pieces, but you have the agile systems to be the fastest, to integrate them into a consumer solution, you win the market.
The companies that win will be the ultimate remix artists, while the slow inventors get left behind. That is an amazing thought experiment to end on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Take a hard look at your own workplace tomorrow. Look at the projects stalled in your pipeline. Are you genuinely using the right tools to build the future? Or are you demanding a 10-year bus schedule for an unbuilt city? Think about it. See you next time.